morning, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and get started. We may have a few more folks straggle in here, but I don't want to keep you waiting. My name is Darcy White with Clary & Associates, part of the consulting team that the city has been working with on the general plan update and the development code update. We're working these projects on a parallel track. You may have attended a meeting with my colleague Don Elliott last time we were talking about the development code, so we'll have different meetings on different subjects, but today we're really focused on the general plan specifically. I know there's been a lot of interest in that and folks really wanting to dive in and start talking about that. So we're anxious to get your feedback today, but before we get started on the exercise we want to work on today, just wanted to give you a little bit of a background on the process itself and then also highlight some of the trends and key issues that we've heard from the community thus far. We started this process back in April with a series of interviews with different folks in the community, different group representations, different interests to try to get a handle on what some of the issues were. And I'll share some of that feedback here with you in a moment. So in terms of the purpose of the general plan, this is really a long-range plan for the community. Typically a general plan like this is going to kind of look forward 10 to 20 years in terms of what the future of the community is going to be. I think one of the things that's often misconstrued about a plan is that it's not a regulatory document. So plans provide policy direction that's then implemented through the development code. So again, that's why having these two processes happen concurrently is a really important opportunity that the city decided to take to make sure that those end products really work well together. One of the important things to think about in terms of the general plan is really it's a way to define the vision for the community. So when you checked in, Elise may have mentioned we've got a table over here about the vision, and that's really kind of the highest level of guidance that the plan provides. So something we'd like to get feedback on. And below that, you establish specific goals and policies related to different issues within the community. So several layers of detail there, and ultimately the goal is to get to a series of actions to help the community move forward. One of the goals as part of this process will be to overhaul that implementation strategy in the current general plan to give you some new direction going forward. So we'll be asking for feedback over the next few months about different strategies and potential priorities for the community to be thinking about to help you move towards that vision over the next 5 to 10 years. So why do we need to update the general plan? Several of you I know were involved in the last general plan update process that was last ratified in 2002. So it's been a while, and it's pretty typical for communities to revisit a plan like this every 5 to 10 years. 10 years is kind of on the longer stretch, so it's a good time to check in with the community, see if it still makes sense. A lot of things have changed over the last 10 years in Lake Havasu and really in the United States as a whole. We've had a serious recession, we've had a lot of changes, and that's impacted communities in different ways. So this is a good time to check in, see what's happening with Lake Havasu residents, and see if the vision and the supporting goals and policies still make sense to you. Another important reason for revisiting the general plan is that since 2002, the community has grown fairly significantly. You've reached the 50,000 population threshold, which, according to the state of Arizona statutes for planning, requires you to add some new elements to your general plan. So I'll talk more about what that means here in a moment, but as you get bigger, a city becomes more complex, and so thus there are some other types of issues that we need to look at as part of this process. But I think, as I mentioned, we're anticipating this isn't really a start from scratch effort, if you will, in terms of the plan itself, but really a chance to fine-tune, check in, and see where we might be missing some things, what might need to be adjusted going forward. So in terms of those new general plan elements, you can see on the left-hand side, those are the existing plan elements in the 2002 plan, and it's a fairly short list. So as I mentioned, you can see in the dark black on the right-hand side, those are the actual new elements and the proposed structure for the plan that we're suggesting to kind of meet those requirements and pop out some of those issues. The one thing I wanted to say about this is that even though there are new elements required, it doesn't necessarily mean that the plan is silent on those issues now. In a lot of cases, there are goals and policies that relate to safety, for example, but there may not be a standalone element. So it's really a matter of reorganizing, pulling out some of those issues, and then adding some additional detail where we need to to address those specific ideas. In terms of public involvement, this is a critical part of the general plan process. In 2002, I know there was significant involvement in the development of that plan. That's one of the reasons why we really see this as a freshening up rather than a start over type of process. But despite that, we are trying to reach out to the community in a variety of different ways. We had a public meeting last night in the same location. We had a fairly small turnout. I'm glad to see a few more folks here this morning. But we also have a online survey that will be available on the community website through the end of the month. So our hope is that all of you who are here will share that link with others who need to participate, you think should be involved, and they'll have the chance to kind of basically go through the same plan check-in exercise that you will do today. So that's something we're hoping to kind of leverage as we go forward. We are also using social media and other avenues. We've got a online sign up on the project website where we do direct distribution for meeting notices and such. So any other ideas that you have in terms of how to get the word out to folks, let us know. We also have a General Plan Advisory Committee, and I know a number of those folks are here today. We're going to be meeting at 11:30, and we've also got a code committee that's kind of, again, running on that parallel track. So through those different avenues, we're hoping to get a broad representation of the community's hopes and goals for the community to kind of work into the plan going forward. In terms of our overall process for the general plan, this is really kind of our we're kind of on the back end of the first step, if you will. We started in April, as I mentioned, with the stakeholder interviews, and that was something we did concurrent with the development code process. And we're now kind of breaking off and really focusing on the plan specifically. So we've just completed a draft plan assessment, which is available on the project website. We've got a few copies floating around. But essentially, a lot of that information is presented in these packets here. So if you want to just focus on those, that's great. But if you're interested, that's available. And that's really kind of a step-by-step, kind of section by section. What do we need to carry forward and update? Where do we need new information? Where do we need more input from you before we can really move forward? So it's really just our first chance to kind of dissect the plan and see what needs to be done. So this is a great opportunity for you guys to kind of get into the process and help us going forward. From here, once we digest all the feedback from these meetings as well as the online tool, we'll go back and begin working on a preliminary draft of the general plan. So we'll be bringing that back on October 30th. We'll have that available probably for a couple weeks beforehand so that you'll have a chance to take a look at that online. If you're interested, come to the meeting, talk to us about maybe what we missed or what you like, what you didn't see in there that you thought should be in there. So you'll have a few bites at this apple. Once we've got the draft feedback in, we'll come back with a final draft in December. So basically, we're really going to be focusing on this through the fall. It's a pretty short process, but I think we find that doing these things in a kind of compressed time frame really helps keep the focus and make sure we kind of get from start to finish in a reasonable time frame. So adoption and ratification will be to be determined in 2015. We're not sure on the specific dates there, so we'll keep you posted. And in terms of just website access, everything's available on the city's website. There's a general plan and development code update tab on the left side or the right side? Left side of the homepage when you get on there. So all the information's there. Any of the documents we produce will be available there as well. So just want to spend a few minutes talking about some of the trends and key issues that we've heard about. I know there are many more that we could probably get into, but I think just to give you a flavor of what we've heard so far. The other document that we have produced so far is the Community Data and Trends Report. And this is really a standalone, it'll ultimately be an appendix in the plan, but just kind of a summary of all the facts and figures, information that is helpful to support the policies in the plan. It's also interesting, if you're just someone who's interested in learning about the community, what do I need to know? And there's a lot of information in there. You can see all the topics that we cover, everything from people to education to utilities. So lots of good information there. So in terms of population, I think the bottom line is that Lake Havasu City is continuing to grow. Besides reaching that 50,000 threshold, we're seeing that projected to carry forward. So in 2012, you were at about 52,000 people. And by next 10 to 20 years, that's projected to reach about 66, 67,000 people. So you are going to continue to see that slow but steady growth over time. And so having a plan in place that really makes sense for the community and to guide that growth is really important. A couple other factors here, obviously water and the availability of land are going to be key issues in terms of accommodating that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But we're also seeing a population that is aging. So if you look at the statistics in the report, the percentage of the population that is over the age of 45 is gradually getting larger. It's becoming a larger percentage of the population. So what that means is over time, we'll have different housing needs and different transportation needs and other issues that we need to think about in addition to the needs for the other portion of the community, so families and other folks who live in the city. In terms of land use, I mentioned that constraints on land were kind of a challenge for us in terms of accommodating growth. And as you're all aware, public land ownership is really a big part of that. So about 30% of the planning area that we're looking at is owned by public entities right now, so whether BLM or another federal or state agency. And that really does play a role in how the city has the ability to grow. So unless those lands are transferred, you have to really look inward for those opportunities. So we're seeing, if you drive around the community today, you see a fair amount of single-family homes on individual lots popping up in established neighborhoods. There is some commercial activity, but that infill and redevelopment focus is something that probably will need to continue as a core part of your growth strategy. Part of that as well is that as that happens, you are going to have some ongoing conflicts potentially between existing uses, existing neighborhoods, and what's happening. So that's something we're paying attention from both from a plan standpoint, but also from a development code standpoint. So whether it's noise issues or light pollution issues, those are things that kind of come into play in terms of how those fit together and make sure they work for the community. Housing in neighborhoods, we've heard a lot of different perspectives on this. I think, again, the mix of housing types going forward will be something to look at. Right now, most of the community housing stock really is single-family detached. And while that works, and that's the choice that a lot of folks have, I think what we're hearing is that there may need to be other options going forward. They may still be single-family homes, but are they designed to be accessible for older residents and other individuals who need an alternate option for housing? We also heard at our meeting last night concerns about homelessness and other issues related to housing ultimately. So those are all things that we'll need to take into account as part of that housing element. So are there new opportunities for attached products, some multifamily, recognizing that there are limited areas that are zoned for that currently, but all things that we can look at as part of the plan update. From an economic standpoint, certainly what we've heard is that, largely Lake Havasu City remains a tourist-based economy. That's obviously had a big influence on the economy, but we're also hearing that there's a little bit of a balance there. You've got a lot of folks who may have grown up here, raised their families here. Hopefully their families have come back and lived here, and so there's a little bit of this tension is what we're hearing between the tourism-based side and the kind of the core residents of the community. And so making sure you can kind of balance those two things and leverage the best of both of those is something that the economic element really will shoot to address. Other factors we've heard, the addition of the ASU campus. I think we've heard a lot of positive feedback about that being an opportunity for folks to who have kids who may want to be able to go to school here. Workforce training opportunities, a lot of things associated with that that can be a real benefit to the community. Open space and recreation, again, this is something we heard a lot about because I think it's something that the community really values. Most folks have said, we live here, we love the setting, we love the access to recreation, and those are things that we really want to protect going forward. There's been a lot of investment in parks and recreation over the last 10 years. I think the last parks plan was, 2008? and the strategic plan. And so there were a variety of projects that came out of that have been implemented in different fashions. But I think that the feedback we're hearing is that the connections between those places in terms of sidewalks and trails are something that the community should continue to work on going forward to kind of create that complete system. Transportation, couple of things I wanted to mention here. One is with the 50,000 population threshold, the formation of the Lake Havasu MPO was another outcome of that threshold, and that's something that's another opportunity. They are actually initiating a planning process in the next month or so, I believe, Stu. And so that's something that will be going on. Certainly will influence the circulation element of the comprehensive plan, the master plan. And so that's something that we'll be coordinating closely with in terms of trying to fit those two things together. I think the other issue we've heard a lot about, and we realize it's still a little bit in flux, is the issue of public transportation. We know there have been some changes very recently related to the transportation system, the transit system, and that there's still some unanswered questions there. But I think with that in mind, we're also hearing from the community that that's a very important situation, opportunity for seniors and others in the community who don't have transportation alternatives. So I think folks who really want to see something carry forward along those lines. So another thing we'll be watching closely in terms of outcomes. The last thing I'll mention is that, I think this may be an obvious one, but I think we heard loud and clear that certainly the environmental issues, whether it's water limitations, conservation, and protecting the resources that you have as a community. So views have been brought up by a number of people, access to the lake, those are all things that the community continues to value and really wants to see carry forward based on what we've heard so far. So I'm going to turn it over to Elise D'Innocenzo. She's going to walk you through some of the materials that you have on your table, but before we shift gears, are there any questions about the process generally or anything I can answer before we move forward? Okay.
Good morning. All right, so as we go through this exercise, what we're looking to do is really analyze any of the existing policies, goals, or guiding principles that are already available in either the 2002 plan or any of the subsequent plans. So that includes that open space and recreation plan and really a multitude of other documents, including there is an emergency preparation and disaster preparation document that the city has released. Some of those goals and policies are stated in the safety, for example, which is a brand new element to be covered. So generally, we're looking to look at all of that existing information, and what we need your guidance and feedback on is whether or not it still makes sense. So if it's great, then we should keep it, but maybe some things have already been accomplished. Maybe some things are new problems that weren't addressed in 2002, but since getting 50,000 people, now it's an issue, and now it needs to be in that plan. So going through, each table has a set of worksheets that you'll have in front of you, and they're organized by chapters. Each chapter addresses several elements that are required by the Arizona statute. So those are on the front page. So what we're looking for is your opinion as to whether the existing goals and policies inside of that worksheet properly reflect the elements on the front part of the worksheet. So as you read through, there's a little stoplight mechanism for response to each of those pages. So if you read something and you say, that makes no sense, then check the red dot and tell us why. If you read something and you say it's still spot on, we don't need to change it, check the green box and tell us why. That's going to help us go through and rule out policies that maybe don't make sense anymore or are outdated, but also it's going to help us identify the policies that we need to maintain and carry forward. So there's 8 different stations. The only station that combines several chapters is the Environmental Conservation and Safety Station, which you have taken up residence on. That one, safety is a brand new topic. You do have some guiding policies and some basis in the documents that already exist, but we really do need a lot of feedback on that. So we'll have time to go through about 4 stations. Last night we let people move at their own pace. Today we'll give everybody a 20-minute notation, so if you'd like to move tables at that time, you can. If you're still not done with your table, you can stay there, that's fine. But we hope that everybody will at least take at least 15 minutes at the community vision table. That's really the overall strategy and guiding principle for the whole document, so we need a lot of feedback on that. After that, if you pick the topics that matter the most to you and weigh in, please do so. And again, the survey will be available online. So if you don't get to a topic today, but you still want to weigh in, you can go online later and you can complete a topic, maybe you have a half hour, so you do 1 topic. And then you go back the next day and you have an hour, so you do 2 more. That's completely fine. That survey will be open through the end of the month for additional feedback. Afterwards, we'll break down, hopefully, into small groups and do a little bit of reporting depending on how many people are left. I know a lot of people can't stay until the full 2-hour period till 11. So if you have to get out early, don't worry. We're still going to collect your worksheets, take all your feedback into consideration. And that's just a brief plug for the upcoming meetings. So if there are any questions, Darcy and I will be floating around to answer them. I know it's a lot of information to digest. That was some of the feedback we got last night, was there's a lot of information in those worksheets. So if anything's unclear, or if you have thoughts but you need help condensing them, just let us know. We'd be happy to help. Thanks.
The only other thing I'd mention real quick too is if you just have a burning issue that you need to get off your chest and don't have time to sit, feel free to just write down specific suggestions. We need a policy related to X. Let us know. That's another way to we'll pick those up as well. So pick your poison, and we're anxious to hear what your thoughts are. So thank you.